The fluorescent lights of Wyoming General Hospital cast harsh shadows across the parking lot as Rebecca Martinez tried to find a comfortable position in the driver's seat of her 10-year-old Honda Civic. For the third night in a row, her car had become her bedroom, her dining room, and her only refuge from a world that seemed determined to crush her spirit. At 29, Rebecca had dedicated her life to healing others. She'd worked double shifts as a registered nurse for 5 years, saving every penny to care for her mother during her brutal battle with cancer. But even with insurance, the experimental treatments had cost everything: her savings, her apartment, and ultimately her mother's life anyway. Now, 3 weeks after the funeral, Rebecca was homeless, nearly broke, and trying to maintain her professional appearance while living out of her car. She'd showered at the hospital gym, kept her scrubs clean in a laundromat, and survived on vending machine food and the kindness of colleagues who occasionally bought her coffee. "This can't be my life," she whispered to herself, watching the sunrise paint the Wyoming mountains in shades of gold and pink. The beauty of the landscape was a stark contrast to the ugliness of her situation. Her phone buzzed with a text from her supervisor. "Rebecca, HR wants to see you at 9 a.m. Important." Rebecca's stomach dropped. She'd been so careful to hide her living situation, but maybe someone had noticed her car in the parking lot every night. If she lost her job now, she'd have nothing left. She made her way into the hospital, forcing a smile for her colleagues and trying to project the competence and stability that had made her one of the most respected nurses on staff. But inside she was falling apart. Meanwhile, 40 miles away in the mountains, Wyatt Sterling was having his own crisis. At 34, he'd built a successful ranch from nothing, raising cattle and horses in the pristine wilderness of the Wyoming Rockies. He was a man who solved problems with hard work and determination, but the problem sitting across from him in his lawyer's office seemed insurmountable. 30 days, Wyatt, his attorney Jim Patterson, said grimly. "That's what the court is giving you. Find a wife and prove you can provide a stable, two-parent home, or Tommy and Lily go into the system." Wyatt's jaw clenched as he thought about his nephews: 12-year-old Tommy, angry and rebellious since his parents' death in a car accident 6 months ago, and 8-year-old Lily, who hadn't spoken more than a few words since the funeral. "This is insane, Jim. I've been raising them for 6 months. They're doing fine." "The state doesn't see it that way," Jim replied. "A single man living in isolation, no female influence, no community support system. It doesn't look good on paper. So I'm supposed to just find some woman and marry her? What kind of foundation is that for a family?" "It's the foundation the court wants to see," Jim said bluntly. "Look, I know it's not ideal, but you're running out of options. If you lose custody, you might never get them back." Wyatt drove home through the mountain roads, his mind racing. He'd promised his sister on her deathbed that he'd take care of her children, and he'd meant it. Tommy and Lily were all the family he had left, and he'd be damned if he'd let some bureaucrat tear them apart. But where was he supposed to find a wife in 30 days? He lived 40 miles from the nearest town, and his social circle consisted mainly of other ranchers and the occasional trip to the feed store. He wasn't exactly swimming in eligible women. That afternoon, Wyatt had to take Lily to the hospital for a follow-up appointment with her therapist. The little girl had been having nightmares since the accident, and the doctor wanted to monitor her progress. As they sat in the waiting room, Wyatt noticed a commotion at the nurse's station. A young Latina woman in scrubs was speaking quietly but urgently with an older woman in a business suit. "I understand your concerns, Mrs. Henderson, but my personal situation doesn't affect my work performance," the nurse was saying. "Rebecca, you're one of our best nurses, but the hospital has policies about employees living on the premises," the older woman replied. "If you can't provide a stable address within the week, we'll have to put you on unpaid leave until you can." Wyatt watched as the nurse, Rebecca, nodded stiffly and walked away, her shoulders set with the kind of pride that came from refusing to break even when everything was falling apart. He recognized that look because he'd worn it himself. "Daddy Wyatt," Lily whispered, tugging on his sleeve. It was one of the few times she'd spoken in weeks. That lady looked sad. Wyatt looked at his niece, then back at the nurse who was now sitting alone in a corner of the waiting room, staring at her hands. An idea began to form in his mind, crazy, impractical, but maybe just desperate enough to work. After Lily's appointment, Wyatt found himself approaching the nurse. She looked up as he neared, and he was struck by her eyes, dark brown, intelligent, and filled with a weariness that spoke of recent loss. "Excuse me," he said, removing his hat. "I'm Wyatt Sterling. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation earlier." Rebecca's defenses went up immediately. "I'm sorry, but if this is about my living situation, I can assure you it's temporary and doesn't affect my work," Actually, Wyatt interrupted gently, I think we might be able to help each other. Rebecca studied him warily. He was tall, probably 6'3", with the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from working outdoors. His clothes were clean but well worn, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. I'm listening, she said cautiously. I need a wife, Wyatt said bluntly. And from what I heard, you need a home. Maybe we can work something out. Rebecca blinked, certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? I know how it sounds, Wyatt said, sitting down across from her. But hear me out. I'm raising my 2 nephews, their parents died 6 months ago. The state says I need to be married to keep custody, and I've got 30 days to make it happen. And you're proposing to a complete stranger? Rebecca asked, incredulous. I'm proposing a business arrangement, Wyatt corrected. You'd have a place to live, stability, and I'd help you get back on your feet financially. In return, you'd help me keep my family together. Rebecca stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. This is insane. Maybe, Wyatt agreed. But sometimes insane is the only option left. He pulled out his wallet and showed her a photo of Tommy and Lily. These kids have lost everything. Their parents, their home, their sense of security. I'm all they have left, and if I lose custody, they'll be separated and put into foster care. Rebecca looked at the photo, seeing the pain in the children's eyes. As a nurse, she'd seen too many kids who'd been failed by the system, and her heart ached for these two. What exactly are you proposing? She asked quietly. Marriage in name only, Wyatt said. You'd have your own room, your own space. No expectations beyond helping me prove to the court that I can provide a stable home. After a year or two, when things settle down, we could quietly divorce and you'd be free to start over wherever you want. And what do I get out of it? A roof over your head, meals, and I'll pay off your debts, Wyatt said. I've got money saved up and the ranch does well. You'd never have to worry about sleeping in your car again. Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes at the mention of her car. She'd thought she'd hidden her situation so well. How did you know about that? She whispered. I've been sleeping in my truck in this parking lot for the past hour, trying to work up the courage to approach you, Wyatt admitted. I saw you getting out of your car this morning with a pillow and a blanket. The kindness in his voice, the lack of judgment, broke something loose in Rebecca's chest. She'd been so strong for so long, carrying the weight of her mother's illness and death, the financial ruin, the shame of her situation. But this stranger was offering her a lifeline without making her feel like a charity case. I don't know anything about raising children, she said. You're a nurse, Wyatt pointed out. You know about caring for people, about healing. That's more than most people have. Rebecca looked at the photo again, then at Wyatt's earnest face. This is crazy. Yeah, Wyatt agreed. But crazy might be exactly what we both need. As Rebecca sat in the hospital waiting room, considering the most impulsive decision of her life, she realized that sometimes salvation came in the most unexpected forms. Maybe this mountain cowboy with his impossible proposal was exactly the miracle she'd been praying for. If I say yes, she said slowly, when would this happen? As soon as possible, Wyatt replied. The clock's ticking and I can't afford to waste any time. Rebecca took a deep breath, thinking about her empty bank account, her car that smelled like the fast food she'd been living on, and the children in the photo who needed someone to fight for them. Okay, she said, surprising herself. Let's do it. Wyatt's relief was palpable. Really? Really, Rebecca confirmed. I need a wife and you need a home, right? Let's see if we can make this work. As they shook hands in the hospital waiting room, neither of them could have predicted that their marriage of convenience would become something neither had dared to hope for. A real family built on love, trust, and the courage to take a chance on each other. 3 days later, Rebecca found herself standing in the doorway of a log cabin that looked like something from a magazine spread about rustic luxury. The Sterling Ranch stretched out before her in all directions, with rolling pastures, snow-capped mountains in the distance, and a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. It's beautiful, she said softly, clutching the single suitcase that contained everything she owned. It's home, Wyatt replied, and she could hear the pride in his voice. Come on, let me introduce you to the kids. Rebecca's stomach churned with nerves as they walked toward the house. She'd agreed to this arrangement in a moment of desperation, but now the reality was setting in. She was about to become an instant mother to 2 traumatized children who didn't know her from a stranger on the street. The front door opened before they reached it, and a boy with dark hair and suspicious eyes stepped out. Tommy was tall for 12, with the gangly awkwardness of adolescence and an expression that suggested he trusted no one. "So you're the lady who's gonna pretend to be our mom," he said, his voice flat and challenging. "Tommy," Wyatt warned, but Rebecca held up a hand. "It's okay," she said, crouching down to Tommy's eye level. "You're right to be suspicious. This whole situation is weird and you don't know me. I'm not here to replace your mom, no one could do that. I'm just here to help your uncle keep you and your sister together." Tommy studied her for a long moment, clearly trying to decide if she was telling the truth. "Are you gonna leave when you get tired of us?" The question hit Rebecca like a physical blow. "No," she said firmly. "I made a promise to your uncle and I keep my promises." A small figure appeared behind Tommy, a little girl with blonde hair and enormous blue eyes that seemed too old for her 8-year-old face. Lily hung back, partially hidden behind her brother, watching Rebecca with the wariness of a wild animal. "Hi, Lily," Rebecca said gently, not moving closer. "I'm Rebecca. I'm going to be staying here for a while." Lily didn't respond, just stared at Rebecca with those haunting eyes. Wyatt had warned her that Lily barely spoke since the accident, communicating mostly through nods and gestures. "She doesn't talk much," Tommy said, his protective instincts clearly strong. "Don't take it personal." "I won't," Rebecca assured him. "Sometimes when we're hurting, words don't feel like enough." Over the next few days, Rebecca tried to find her place in the Sterling household. Wyatt had given her the master bedroom while he moved to a smaller room down the hall, insisting that appearances mattered if the social worker made surprise visits. The house was comfortable but clearly masculine, with leather furniture, hunting trophies, and a kitchen that looked like it was rarely used for anything more complicated than heating up frozen dinners. "I'm not much of a cook," Wyatt admitted on her second morning, watching her examine the sparse contents of his refrigerator. "Good thing I am," Rebecca replied, making a mental list of groceries they'd need. "Cooking for my mom during her treatment taught me how to make nutritious meals on a budget." She'd expected resistance from the children, but Tommy surprised her by offering to help with grocery shopping, and Lily shadowed her around the house like a silent ghost, watching everything she did with intense curiosity. It was during her first week that Rebecca discovered Wyatt's horses, and everything changed. She was exploring the property while the kids were at school when she heard a commotion from the barn. Inside, she found Wyatt struggling with a beautiful chestnut mare who was clearly in distress. "What's wrong with her?" Rebecca asked, immediately moving closer. "Colic, I think," Wyatt said, sweat beading on his forehead. "I've called the vet, but he's an hour away and she's getting worse." Rebecca approached the horse slowly, her nurse's instincts kicking in. She'd grown up on her grandfather's small farm in New Mexico and had always had a way with animals. "Hey, beautiful," she murmured, placing her hands on the mare's neck. "Let me take a look at you." For the next 20 minutes, Rebecca worked with the horse, using techniques she'd learned from her grandfather combined with her medical knowledge. She massaged the mare's belly, encouraged her to walk, and monitored her vital signs with the skill of a trained professional. By the time the veterinarian arrived, the mare was significantly improved. "Well, I'll be damned," Dr. Peterson said, examining the horse. "Whatever you did, it worked. She's going to be fine." Wyatt stared at Rebecca in amazement. "Where did you learn to do that?" "My grandfather raised horses," Rebecca explained, stroking the mare's nose. "I spent summers on his ranch as a kid. I guess I never forgot." "You never mentioned you knew about horses." Rebecca shrugged. "You never asked. There's a lot we don't know about each other yet." That evening, as they sat down to the first home-cooked meal the Sterling house had seen in months, Wyatt found himself really looking at his wife for the first time. She'd pulled her dark hair back in a ponytail, and there was a smudge of flour on her cheek from making homemade bread. She looked domestic. Content. "This is really good," Tommy said, actually smiling as he took a second helping of her chicken enchiladas. "Thank you," Rebecca replied. "It was my mom's recipe." Lily, who had been quietly eating, suddenly reached over and touched Rebecca's hand. When Rebecca looked at her, Lily pointed to her own chest and then to Rebecca, a gesture that clearly meant, "I like you." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "I like you too, sweetheart." Later that night, after the kids were in bed, Wyatt found Rebecca on the front porch, wrapped in a blanket and staring up at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "Just thinking about how different my life is now," Rebecca said. "A week ago I was sleeping in my car. Now I'm married to a man I barely know, living on a ranch in the middle of nowhere, and somehow it feels more like home than anywhere I've lived in years." "Any regrets?" Wyatt asked. Rebecca considered the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "What about you? Having second thoughts about marrying a stranger?" "Not even close," Wyatt replied. You saved my horse today, you made my nephew smile for the first time in months, and you're getting through to Lily in ways I never could. If anything, I'm wondering what I did to deserve this kind of luck. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. Rebecca found herself stealing glances at Wyatt, noting the way the moonlight highlighted the strong line of his jaw, the gentle way he tucked Lily into bed earlier, the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from him. Wyatt, she said softly, can I ask you something? Anything. Why haven't you ever married? I mean, before this arrangement. You're a good man, you're successful, you're? She trailed off, realizing she was about to say, attractive, and feeling heat rise in her cheeks. Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. I was engaged once, he said finally. About 5 years ago. Her name was Jennifer. She was a teacher in town and I thought we wanted the same things. What happened? She wanted me to sell the ranch, move to Denver, get a real job, Wyatt said, his voice tinged with old hurt. Said she couldn't live in the middle of nowhere, that she needed culture and civilization. When I told her the ranch wasn't negotiable, she gave me an ultimatum. And you chose the ranch. I chose the life I'd built, Wyatt corrected. The life my father and grandfather built before me. This land, this way of life, it's who I am. I couldn't give that up, not even for love. Rebecca nodded, understanding. My ex-husband was the opposite. He wanted me to give up nursing, said it was too demanding, that I should focus on being a wife. When my mom got sick and I refused to stop working to pay for her treatments, he left. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me that the right person doesn't ask you to choose between them and who you are. They support who you are. Wyatt looked at her, something shifting in his expression. Is that what you think we're doing? Supporting who each other is? I think, Rebecca said carefully, that we're both getting something we need from this arrangement. And maybe if we're lucky we might find something we didn't know we were looking for. The next morning brought their first real test. Rebecca was making breakfast when a car pulled up the driveway, a state vehicle that made Wyatt's blood run cold. Social services, he said grimly, watching through the window as a stern-looking woman in a business suit got out of the car. Showtime, Rebecca said, quickly untying her apron and smoothing her hair. Remember, we're newlyweds who are madly in love. Wyatt caught her hand as she moved past him. Rebecca, if this doesn't work. It will work, she said firmly. We're not going to let them take those kids. As the social worker knocked on the door, Rebecca and Wyatt stood together, united in their determination to protect the family they were building, one that was becoming more real with each passing day. 2 weeks after a successful social worker visit, Rebecca's fragile new life was shattered when she encountered her abusive ex-husband, David Martinez, in town. David had discovered her marriage to Wyatt and threatened to expose their arrangement as fraud unless they paid him $50,000 within 48 hours. Quite a step up from sleeping in your car, David sneered, revealing he knew about her desperate circumstances before the marriage. He threatened to contact social services, the local newspaper, and state authorities, which would result in Tommy and Lily being removed from Wyatt's custody. Rebecca returned home devastated, unable to see a way out. While helping Lily with an injured horse, the little girl asked her a heartbreaking question. Will you fix us too? Rebecca realized how much these children meant to her and how she couldn't let David destroy their family. That evening, Rebecca confessed everything to Wyatt, about David's abuse during their marriage, his current threats, and the impossible deadline. Instead of anger, Wyatt surprised her with a proposal that changed everything. We make this marriage real, Wyatt said, taking her hands. If we're really married, really committed to each other and to those kids, then it's not fraud. Wyatt confessed his growing feelings. I'm falling in love with you. These past few weeks have been the best of my life, not because of our arrangement but because of you. Because of how you've made this house a home. Rebecca, tears streaming down her face, admitted she felt the same way. I love you too. I love you and I love those kids and I love the life we're building together. When David called the next morning demanding payment, he found himself facing a united front. Wyatt calmly told him to go ahead and make your calls, because they were now a real family built on genuine love. You want to investigate our marriage? You'll find 2 people who love each other and are committed to raising 2 beautiful children together. Wyatt's confident response, backed by the threat that mountain men protect what's theirs, caused David to hang up and disappear from their lives permanently. 6 months later, the Sterling family had transformed completely. Rebecca watched from the kitchen window as Wyatt taught Tommy to rope cattle, the boys' laughter filling the air, a sound that had become common since she'd joined their lives. Lily, now speaking regularly and calling Rebecca Mom, presented her with a drawing of their family labeled, My Family, in careful block letters. When Lily asked if Rebecca would stay forever, Rebecca promised forever and always. The changes had been remarkable. David had disappeared after Wyatt's confrontation, social services had closed their case with a glowing report, and the family had found genuine happiness together. That evening Wyatt surprised Rebecca by proposing again, this time for real. Dropping to one knee in their kitchen, he presented a diamond ring and asked her to marry me for all the right reasons this time. Not because we need each other but because we want each other. Not for convenience but for love. Rebecca tearfully accepted, and Tommy and Lily burst in, excited about having the best wedding ever. Lily asked to walk Rebecca down the aisle, while Tommy wanted to be involved in the ceremony. 3 months later, they held their real wedding on the ranch with the Rocky Mountains as their backdrop. Tommy walked Rebecca down the makeshift aisle in their front pasture, while Lily served as both flower girl and ring bearer. Pastor Williams officiated, with friends, neighbors and Rebecca's hospital colleagues celebrating with them. During their vows, both Wyatt and Rebecca declared their love, with all my heart, and Pastor Williams pronounced them husband and wife. Again. As they danced under the stars to country music, Rebecca reflected on their incredible journey. When Wyatt asked if she had any regrets, she replied, Only one, that it took me so long to find you. The story concluded with the Sterling family thriving. Tommy and Lily were secure and happy, the ranch was prospering with Rebecca's medical skills helping care for the animals, and Rebecca had found not just a home but a true purpose. I love you, mountain cowboy, Rebecca whispered as they danced. I love you too, my beautiful nurse, Wyatt replied. Forever and always. Their marriage of convenience had become a genuine love story, proving that sometimes when you think you're helping someone else, you end up saving yourself. The Sterling family had been forged by love, strengthened by trials, and built on the foundation that the best families are those you choose to create. Under the Wyoming stars, with mountains standing sentinel around their paradise, they danced on, secure in the knowledge that their unexpected beginning had led to the most beautiful ending of all.